Good morning. It's Monday. Sorry for the sassy look. It was taking a little while for the video to start. So, when you wear your husband's t-shirts and you look all wild, I'm sorry. I know I've said it before. Like, I just crack myself up that I'm trying to fix a bathrobe. Like, why? Why even bother? Okay. So I've been seeing things come to pass in my life that have been things asked for, things pressed into, things needed, felt like they were needed for years. And so I was praying this morning and just thanking God for the things that I'm seeing come to pass. And he said to me, I want to make sure I get it right because it was sweet. I always write beautiful stories. I always write beautiful stories. And I just thought about that. We live in the Charlotte area, Charlotte, North Carolina. And so Rock Hill, South Carolina is really, really close to us. And for anybody who does not know, there was a mass shooting there earlier last week. Just tragic murder of two grandparents, two of their grandchildren that they were watching, and two men who were servicing the air conditioner because the man was angry at the grandfather for unjust reasons. He was a physician, and the guy wanted narcotics, and the physician said no. And so he came to their house and he killed everybody there. So devastating story. And so, the grandparents, their family, are strong believers and have come out, standing firm on the power of redemption and the power of forgiveness, and with prayers for the all affected, all four families, including the family of the man who killed all those people and then turned the gun on himself. And so I think about that in the midst of this heaviness of this tragedy that took place. And this promise from God that I always write beautiful stories. They're not easy, but you think about your favorite movies. There's always this situation of, a battle that's insurmountable, a challenge that seems impossible, a foe that seems undefeatable, and yet courage, majesty, strength, beauty, love, glory, all those things. I keep trying to think of words. I keep thinking of the same ones. All these things that bring up, that take you from act 2, right? Because it's like the 3-act story of, everything's fine, valley, victory, right? And it's beautiful. And it's more beautiful than it would have been if it was just a happily ever after. They met and they fell in love and they lived happily ever after. No one's got that story. Nobody. Sometimes when we're in, Anna Karenina, I think it is, says something like, happy families all look the same, but like dysfunctional families, everybody's got their own different flavor. Something like that. I don't remember the exact quote, but the basic idea is in our tragedy, we always feel so alone because it's such an all-encompassing emotion, and yet, any life we look at is marked by pain and suffering and struggle, and oftentimes we don't know until we go deeper and we scratch the surface, right? So I just commend this promise to you that he always makes beautiful stories. If your story does not feel right now like it's beautiful, you're in act 2. You're in the struggle. You're in the moments of great pain and angst, going, how can this look better? The only way it can look better is this right here. Okay, the only way is by pressing into the promises of God and then not letting go until they come to fruition. There was a situation many years ago now, maybe 4 to 6 years ago, something like that, of a couple also living in my area who were driving back from a wedding or something like that, and they got hit from behind by somebody that was under the influence, she was pregnant, and maybe it was just her who got hit. I think they were in separate cars. She was pregnant, and their 2-year-old was in the back seat. And the 2-year-old died, and she was like 8 months pregnant. So they had the baby, and then the baby died. So they went from being a family of 4 to just being the husband and wife again in like a day. And just the tragedy, I mean, you know, the church family, like I didn't know them personally, but we're all praying for this couple because we knew people who knew them. And years go by, and they had twin boys, you know, a few years later. And they said in their statement, as you know, as they were sharing this new chapter of their story, basically something along the lines of, God's not done until it's good. Okay? The story's not over until the story is good. Okay? And that doesn't mean that it's going to be sunshine and roses, and it doesn't mean that you necessarily will be restored what you've lost on earth. But there is a path to peace, and there's a path to healing, and there's a path to that Romans 8:28, that it's going to be made for good for those who love God and are called according to his purposes. Like, we get to take that to the bank. We get to go just like Martin Luther King Jr. did in the I Have a Dream speech, where he's like, there's an account that's owed to the black people, right? We're calling in our promissory note. You say in the constitutional documents that all men are created equal, right? You say that we are to be treated with the same honor and respect, and that has not happened, okay? We get to go to God with the same thing, and we get to say, your word says, I'm the head and not the tail. I'm above and not beneath. Your word says that you turn everything to good for those who love you and are called according to your purposes. Well, guess what? I love you. I want to be called according to your purposes. Bring it home. Like, I'm calling in the account. I'm calling in the promissory note. You make this pledge to us, and that we don't have to show up perfect. We have to show up as his. Okay, Jesus did the perfect. We just have to show up as his. Like, may we not think that there's some sort of accounting that needs to be done of my life is bad because I haven't done X, Y, and Z for God. Jesus did. Jesus did it all. And so we get to call in that promissory note and say, listen, his blood has made me righteous. Hey, boo. Aw, she's giving me toys.
Yeah, it's your toys that
Want to say hi?
Yes, can I stay with you, Mom?
You can stay with me if you let me talk. Okay, so we get to call in the accounting. So I commend that to you guys. Sorry, we're gonna get settled, little boo bear. I commend that to you guys, that you hold fast to his promises. We talked, I think, a week or two ago about how Israel held fast to get the blessing from God, and his hip got touched as a result. He wrestled with God throughout the night, and his hip got touched, as they say touched, but he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. Hold fast to his promises, hold fast to his word, and just stand on the truth that he always writes beautiful stories, okay? And I was thinking too about the Israelites. Imagine like they're in Egypt, and if Moses came to them and said, hey, listen, I've got a deal for you. We're gonna get delivered out of Egypt. We're gonna have to face down Pharaoh's army. We're going to escape through a sea, and then we're going to wander in the wilderness for 40 years, and every single one of you that's standing here is going to die before we get to the promised land. Who wants to come with me? Nobody, right? But the reason God doesn't disclose is because who would take the journey if we knew the full story? But here's what we don't know. We don't see the grace that's going to hold us through. We don't see the grace that's going to provide for us every single step of the way, okay? All we see is from the outside, just this big, long, hard, right? And then we're in the middle of it, and it feels like this big, long, hard. But what we don't see is the manna that comes from heaven. We can't imagine what it would be like to be led by a pillar of smoke and fire. We can't see all the little graces that are coming along the way to help us in our journey to the fulfillment of God's purposes in our lives. right? We look at other people's stories and we go, I could never survive that. I could never survive that. But the truth of the matter is, you right now could never survive it, because you don't need that grace right now. You don't need to walk through the grace of whatever that thing out there is that you're looking at and going, oh God, please don't let that be my story. I could never do that. I could never do that. You could never do it. Him in you, the manna for that day, that hard day, that agony, that pain is there waiting for you should you have to walk through it. So may we fear no longer, oh my gosh, I could never. You don't have to. You don't have to, okay? Because his grace is sufficient for you. His power is made perfect in weakness. The word for that is like, tell something. I took Greek bunches of years ago. It's tell something, teleo or something like that. It means completion. His grace is completed, is perfected in our weakness, okay? So we get to come and we get to go, I don't think I could ever do that. And we get to stand on the promises of, yes, we could, because the manna comes from heaven for the day on which we need it. We don't get manna for 4 days. The only time he gave extra manna was when we were called into a Sabbath rest, okay? So we get the double portion on Saturday to lead us through the Monday. We don't get more than 2 days, ever, okay? So may you stand on that, y'all. The grace to stand on the promises of God, that he always makes beautiful stories, okay? Have a beautiful day. Tell me, what is your beautiful story today? I want to hear all about it, okay? You and I can talk about that afterwards. Say bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Have a great day.